Hey BookTube friends, it's Carrie. I'm coming at you today with the Midyear book Freakout tag, and this is the first time I've done this tag, obviously, since this is the first year I've been on BookTube. I'm really excited to do it, and I will link the co-creators of this tag in the description box as well. So prompt number 1 is best book you've read so far in 2021, which is a super hard question for anyone on BookTube. So I did choose 3 from 3 different categories. The first one I chose was a classic, so Silas Marner by George Eliot, which I just talked about in last week's weekly wrap-up. But when I finished this book, my gut reaction was that was a perfect book. And I know that's a strong word, but I had had a disappointing reading week otherwise, and this book ticked off the boxes for things I look for. It is a very good portrayal of England in a certain time and place. The characters were well done. It was a sweet story, and I just loved it. I can't say enough about it. The second book is actually a young adult historical fiction, and that is 13 Doorways, Wolves Behind Them All by Laura Ruby. And this book is set in Chicago during World War II in an orphanage. And so we have a really neat cast of young characters. There's also a bit of a paranormal element to this one as well, because we have a ghost character. So we do see the stories of our main character and the ghost character intersect in very interesting ways. It even goes beyond World War II. You get a little bit of World War I and flu pandemic in there as well. And I just thought this was a very interesting historical fiction with a little paranormal flavor to it. The third book that I chose is a nonfiction book, and that is The 4 Agreements, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom, a Toltec Wisdom Book by Don Miguel Ruiz. And this book really struck me in its simplicity and how truthful it was. It essentially talks about a guide to living that will enhance your happiness and your freedom, and it was so simple, but it was very powerful. So I had to put that one on the list because that's one that I will probably revisit at some point. Question 2 is best sequel you've read so far in 2021, which is an easy question for me to answer because I've only read one sequel this year, and that was Chimes of the Lost Cathedral by Janet Fitch. I would highly recommend that duology. The first book is The Revolution of Marina M. If you are at all interested in Russian history, I would definitely recommend this duology. I fell in love with the character Marina, and I loved the sequel just as much as I loved the first book. Number 3 is new release you haven't read but want to, and that has to be The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. She is one of my favorite authors, and of course historical fiction is one of my favorite genres, and this one is set during the Dust Bowl era. I'm sure I'll read it at some point, I just haven't gotten around to it. Number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I don't really keep up with the new releases. I just don't want the anxiety of trying to keep up with any sort of trend. I just read good books, and I don't put myself on a timetable for that. Most of the books that I purchase now being used books, I don't really keep up with the new releases as much. Number 5 is biggest disappointment, and I actually wrote down 2 books for this. The first being The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce, and the second being Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. Both of these books had really neat, scary concepts that seemed really creepy and appealing to me, but the execution just really fell flat for me. So those 2 definitely a disappointment. Number 6 is biggest surprise. I would say for this it was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, simply because this book deals with a young girl who has suffered from sexual abuse at the hands of a trusted teacher at a boarding school, and because this book deals with such a sensitive and heavy topic, I was really surprised at how well done it was and how it really puts you into the mindset of that young girl, and you could really get some insight into the manipulation and the long-term consequences that this girl would suffer in her adult life because of the abuse. So that was definitely a surprise for me. Number 7 is favorite new author, debut, or new to you. And I'm going to go with Peter Swanson, who is a mystery writer, and I just read 8 Perfect Murders this year, and I absolutely loved it. It was pretty neat to read a mystery that featured a bookstore and actually discussed a lot of other mystery novels, so that was kind of a cool concept. And I'm excited to see what else he has out there. I know some of my subscribers actually gave me some recommendations for other Peter Swanson books, so I am excited to read more from him. Number 8 is newest fictional crush, and like most of you guys, you know, I don't really do fictional crushes per se, but I will tell you a real life crush. And I just started reading a memoir by Rob Lowe, and he is definitely a crush of mine. I just think he is absolutely adorable. He has aged so well, and he just seems like a very genuine, down-to-earth person. And reading his memoir, I don't think my idea about him is misguided. He also did a show for, I think it was A&E, where they investigated the paranormal and looked into aliens and things like that. So I thought that was really cool. I'm into that sort of thing, so of course that bumped him up on my crush scale. But yeah, I'll go with Rob Lowe. Number 9 is newest favorite character, and for this I'm going to go with Harry Dresden, the wizard detective from the Dresden Files series. I just read my first in that series, and there's no character in my mind that has more swagger than Harry Dresden. Number 10 is book that made you cry, and I'm going to go with one of the books that was very difficult to read, and that was Symphony for the City of the Dead, Dmitri Shostakovich and the Siege of Leningrad by M.T. Anderson. And when I say it was difficult to read, I don't mean it wasn't well written. It was just difficult because it deals with such a desperate situation for an entire city of people, and it was horrifying. It wasn't shocking for me because I knew a little bit about that from studying World War II, but just to hear a lot of the details and the lengths that citizens had to go to just to survive was truly horrifying. Number 11 is a book that made you happy, and I'm going to go with The Library Book by Susan Orlean, which seems kind of weird, I guess, because that book is actually about the worst library fire in American history, the burning of the Los Angeles Public Library in the 1980s. But the reason that book made me happy is because it talked about the special place that libraries and librarians hold in our society, and you know, they are kind of a bastion of intellectual freedom and a refuge for so many people. So that definitely made me happy. Number 12, most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. I haven't purchased a lot of books this year, but I will say this book, SPQR by Mary Beard, it does have that gold accent on it, and Beth Ann Berninga Sokolar, she also mentioned a book that had gold leaf on it, so it made me think of this one. The second book that I think is beautiful was a gift from Summer over at Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats, and that's Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero by Chris Matthews. I just love this picture of John F. Kennedy because it does seem to be a candid photo, and you just wonder with a picture like this, you know, it has an air of mystery. What is he looking at? What is he thinking about at that particular moment? So, of course, I think this cover is beautiful. Number 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Well, these are some books that I'm hoping to read before the end of the year. I know Noah over at Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse had talked about doing a like buddy or group read of The Master and the Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov, which I'm hoping to join in on. We'll see if they have room for me. And I'm also hoping to receive my copy that I ordered from Thrift Books of Marilyn Monroe, The Final Years by Keith Badman. And I'm excited because Sandy over at Miss Reads a Lot has agreed to do a buddy read with me, and I definitely need to learn a little bit more about Marilyn Monroe. Obviously, she's got the Kennedy connection, so I think that will be a very interesting read, and I just love Sandy, so it'll be cool to do a buddy read with her. And of course, the last book that I need to read will be Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero, and I'm supposed to buddy read this in November with Summer and also with Pay over at Attention. So I'm very excited to do that with two of my favorite booktubers. So that's the end of the tag. If anyone out there hasn't done the tag and wants to, go for it. So now we need to discuss a very serious matter of great importance. Our nation is very divided and polarized right now. The reason for this won't truly come to a head until October 31st. And of course, the issue at hand is candy corn. John over at Hey Y'all Listen Up did execute a very brilliant offensive maneuver the other day in this candy war. And so I am compelled to respond. Now, I'm going to save my nuclear options until a little bit closer to Halloween because I don't want to ruin, candy consumption during the lead up to Halloween. But just so you know, John, I am stockpiling a lot of articles and data and statistics that will be ready for launch if necessary. Over the next few months, I will be conducting research and recruiting allies in this important fight for deliciousness. A big thank you goes out to Margaret Pennard, who has already drawn a line in the sugar, declaring her opposition to candy corn. So I will link her video that includes a little candy corn shout out in it as well. Now, since John brought the cinematic masterpiece Mean Girls into the fray, I felt that it was only appropriate that I fire back with a comment inspired by Regina George herself. Now, I don't want to exhaust all of my resources here at the beginning of this war because this could be a long drawn out affair and it could end up being a war of attrition. But I will say this, even the Google suggestions agree with me, John. And you can't fight Google. You can't. So, if you are willing to sign some sort of truce, if you want to wave the white flag, I am more than willing to come to the table. I will do that. In all seriousness, this candy war of sorts is just a bit of fun between me and John. I really hope it doesn't offend anyone's tastes. Read what you want, eat what you want. And please feel free to ignore me and John and our shenanigans if we show up in your comments as well. However, if you are inclined to join in on the fun, I sincerely hope you will join the right side of this debate. I hope everyone is having a great day, and please shoot me a comment if you've read any of the titles that I talked about, or if you are, on my side in this candy corn debate. I will link the videos in the description box that started it all, so if you need to catch up with where we're at in this fight, you can do that. So thanks for watching, guys, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.